Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we want to once again talk about the Flashstor Flashstor. In this case, again, the Flashstor Flashstor 12 Pro. And why are we talking about this today? Well, because today we're going to be doing some 8K Plex testing, which, let's face it, is an absolute migraine to even imagine here. Now, to give you a quick recap, yesterday I performed the Plex media server testing. Now, for you, that's already live. But for me, I ended up doing the 4K Plex media server testing of the Flashstor. And as you can see here, if I bring that up on screen, to bring the volume down, this is my original kind of test file here when I was going through all the different test patterns here throughout that. And overall, with the exception of a couple of very small elements, the Flashstor was able to play pretty much all of my 4K catalogue there. And I mentioned at the end of that video that I was so impressed by it that I was going to make it one of the few NASs that I test on the channel for 8K Plex. Now, 8K Plex is insane. Reason being that even if you have an half-decent CPU in order to take advantage of Plex, which, by the way, this thing doesn't. It has a Celeron processor inside. You still need to have media that can chuck data fast enough for the system to utilize. So it's a combination of having a good CPU, good graphics handling, and good storage media and performance to chug it all along. And this Flashstor is running on NVMe's, and they're in a RAID. So I thought, hell, we're going to try it. So I have not tested the 8K files here. I've double checked, I've rescanned the whole database, but the results that you see here today are exactly the same ones that I'm going to see for the first time. Now, I'm going to put that disclaimer straight out of the way. If this doesn't play anything, then frankly, I'm not going to be angry at it, because this isn't a NAS that you should be buying for 8K Plex. But if it can play a handful of these files, even one, each one of the videos is going to be an achievement. But if you haven't watched the 4K video, it's really, really important you watch that one first. There's lots of background about this device, and I go into a lot more detail about the storage configuration that we're going to be utilizing. We've got a few different pools there. We talk about the actual files. In this case, we're using these 8K files here, and at the same time, we are enabling media mode. All of these things are very, very important to running Plex Media Server on your NAS. Likewise, although we do have a client application ready and available to us here, this client application here we can use to play Plex natively with supported compression. We are going to be running it in the web browser and periodically going towards the client application, because the client application is not representative of all people's user case environments, whereas the browser can give you a much more balanced view without licensing there. And again, I go into way more detail on this in the previous video, so I recommend you check that one out. But we'll be periodically hopping back to that Plex app every now and then, as well as the task manager, because sometimes if we do hit a bottleneck, I do think it's important that we find out the bottleneck is to do with the Flashstor NAS. Is it to do with Plex Media Server, or is it to do with a lack of license, or is it just this host system, which is an Asus TUF 2021 generation NAS here? It is a bit of a beast, if I'm going to be totally frank with you there. If we go to the system properties there, you can see we're running a 12th gen i5, 24 gig of DDR5 memory. This is not a slouch laptop here. But if we do think some of the bottlenecks have been created by this system, then we'll know. And yes, RAM usage is exceedingly high here, but you're going to get that during the course of our test. So let's get straight down to business, shall we? On the left-hand side, we've got Plex. There's our Flashstor NAS, and there are the 8K files. We've got 8K files. Lovely. On the right-hand side, we have got CPU utilization and memory utilization, and we're going to be keeping an eye on those. But let's go straight away with our first one. This is a file called Helium Fire. Apologies for the break in recording. I just realised two of my files are exactly the same file, but they've got the wrong name. So we're not going to play that first file simply because it is clearly the same as this file here. So what we'll do is we'll go on to our next file here. This is called Japan 8K. It's an HEVC, so H.265 file. So again, you're going to need a license on your system to play these sort of files. At 7,680 over 3,432 at 23.9 frame rate there, and it's an MKV file. So let's go ahead and play this file here. Of course, it's going to have to convert this file. It's going to have to convert it. It is going to have to work hard. We are seeing the orange, but it's playing. Fair play. It's playing. I'm not going to say it's absolutely smashing it. I'm definitely not going to say that this is what I would call a smooth experience, but the CPU's not at 100% utilization, and playback is just behind encoding there and buffering there in the background. I'd call that a success. And if we look at the quality, it has scaled it down because obviously it can't output 8K in this scenario, so it's had to scale it down to 4320p, but still nonetheless, I'd say that's pretty good. If we skip forward, let's see how it deals with skipping forward throughout the files. And again, we're going to see slowdown because we're not going to be harsh on this NAS here. Because remember, the hardware architecture of this, I just accidentally paused it. The hardware architecture of this device, remember, whether you go for the 6-bay device, which is $499, or you go for the 12-bay, about $850, the hardware architecture is the same. It's the same quad-core Celeron with 4 gig of memory. We've not upgraded the memory beyond the default 4 gig. So again, I'm loath to call anything in this video today a success if they're all going to be, kind of that hefty user case, particularly if you're running other operations. But I'd still say that was as close to a success as I thought I would ever see on an NAS of this price point and that architecture. Now, if we head back to that Plex Media Server client application, this is where we're going to see the difference. So if we go for the 8K files there, we can see that file that we've just started watching there. So we're just going to mark that as played, and we're going to go back in. We're going to find that file, and again, we're going to play it again, but this time using the native client app. And as we can see, it's there at the bottom. We can open it up, and it's trying to play it in original quality. Fair play, it's trying, but frankly, it's chugging along, and I'm not going to call that successful on a client. Once again, this is why we used the browser app there, because the client app, there's just too many variables, and as you can see, everything's getting significantly throttled. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's just your local PC that's not staying up to snuff. Look, we're not using full utilization, and moreover, if we go ahead and exit there, and I bring up the original file, and we pop that on the PC without Plex. I'm just going to fast forward a second. So what we've done now is we've taken those files from earlier, put them on this drive here, and now we're accessing these files locally on my PC. So we've completely removed Plex Media Server from the equation. We right-click, we play with VLC, and we can see we've got a slight second for it to load. But as you can see, it's playing that file. If we go into the codec information there, as you can see. So it was very much the client application and the network transmission, perhaps, that was forming something of a bottleneck, because if we play that file natively on my PC via that external drive, it ran absolutely fine. So let's go ahead and safely remove our drive, disconnect that SSD, get you out of Dodge. Cool. Let's have a look. It's still being used apparently, but we're done there. And now we can carry on with our Plex testing there. So next file, we're going to go to Nightscape 8K Ultra HD. This is using one of the Google codecs, VP90. Again, if I'm wrong, do correct me on that. But it's 60 frames per second HDR. 24, I don't know why it's 24 and 60 frames per second there. It is a 60 frames per second file, I know that much. So let's go ahead and play this file. So we're already seeing early engagement. We're clearly seeing the conversions happening there in the background. And again, they've had to neuter it down to 4K, 4320p 8K. But still, we're seeing playback. And if anything, we're seeing slightly better playback than what we saw before. So again, fair play. Now, remember, the tests you're seeing are not representative of all multimedia case scenarios. We're not looking at files sometimes when you're looking at movies, which in 8K are going to be in the tens of gigabytes. It's in some cases the hundreds, depending on RAW and frame rate and stuff like, and the bit rate. But still nonetheless, despite that CPU being as modest as it is, it's those NVMEs that can deliver enough performance where it's removing one of the core throttling points and the kind of hurdles that AK Multimedia enjoyment has had all this time with the delivery of the data to a waiting system. And because it's being converted down, it's doing a damn fine job. So we'll come out of that and run our next test here. This one is going to be Patagonia, an HEVC, so H.265 again. I should add, 8K is pretty much all HEVC, and we're seeing some new arising codecs and some new open source codecs arriving on the market, which should hopefully challenge HEVC. But 29 frames per second MKV file, we'll play that one there. And I think now we're getting a rhythm. I'm hoping this is going to be able to play this. Now, again, we're not seeing like earth-shattering playback, and we're certainly seeing the system clunk along with this, but still nonetheless, as a test case, this is still very impressive that it's able to handle this media overall here. Again, it's having to convert it down because of the codec support there. And as mentioned, when we tried to play these files natively, let's play Patagonia natively via the client application, the Plex client applications are far from 8K ready. So we have to wonder what things would be like if we had an 8K ready Plex. But if we open it up there at the top, we can see that when it's trying to play its original massive bit rate, I say moderately massive bit rate, but huge resolution in its original format. Sorry, I accidentally paused it. It's trying, but then we've got limitations of the client devices. And why is this significant? Easily because if you're using like an Amazon Fire Stick, even a home console that's not allowing client-side conversions and client-side hardware resource utilization, that means although Plex clearly has the capability, or at least on this device, to do conversions when it comes to native playback, there has to be a kind of leveraging point between both the server and the client for handling the original file delivery and the sheer scale of difference. It's less about the overall size of the file, but the amount of data packets at any given time. So, although, again, I would still not quite recommend this for 8K, at least until the rest of your infrastructure is ready to rock. It's leaving me very, very impressed. Do you know what? And I don't know why I accidentally played that, because what we want to do is play it in the web browser. Now we're going for our Peru file here. 60 frames per second, HDR HEVC. And again, very slow uptake on the file, but it is at the very least trying. We're seeing that down there, but I don't know how long it would be able to maintain that performance level. I think eventually playback would overwrite that. And if we look at the CPU utilization, that media mode and the kind of regearing of its internal components to playback, that media is impressive. But I do think in this file format, you wouldn't be able to enjoy it, particularly if you were going to skip forward, and certainly if you were going to run multiple files there. And for those wondering, I'm not going to run multiple files at once on this in 8K on this system, because that would be unfair to show this, because that is an unrealistic expectation of this price point. Now, if we go for the Rio file here in 8K, again, this is one of those Google codec ones, VP90. Again, it's going to have to convert because it doesn't have that supported compression on there. But for me, still running very, very well. We've got it. Let's look at that quality there. Again, 4320p, 8K. Converted down to, but still maintaining that to the highest quality it can. We're seeing CPU utilization still moderately high at all times, but not earth-shattering. And again, I'm going to say that's fine. One thing I didn't do just now when we were looking at Peru is I didn't have that on screen what it was playing at. So again, that was a 4320p, so it was still managing quite substantially to attack that file earlier. So next, Space Station, an HEVC file, again 23.9 bit rate, and this is an MP4. So in theory, this should run even better, because unlike MKV files, MP4 files are a lot easier to process in the way they're packaged. And again, we're not surprised that it is playing it. Yes, it's having to convert every single file, and it's had to convert it down to 138.7 megabits per second. But still, that is a tremendous performance threshold. Let's skip forward, have a little look how that goes there. And again, seemingly running very, very well. Again, not what I would call a seamless, smooth experience, but for the price point you're paying, and if you can get hold of client devices in your multimedia environment that can offload and do the client-side stuff, this might be enough for you. We'll come out there. Next, we're going to our last two files. This is Uzbekistan, an 8K HDR, another VP90 compression, 60 frames per second. I don't, again, ignore 24 frames there. We'll open that up, get that up there on screen. And again, it's downgraded it down to 16.7. and it's 4320p 8K. Again, my knowledge of 8K, I've only just started really mastering the whole 4K stuff, and 8K has introduced some brand new compression techniques, which I think I'm going to have to learn soon. But I won't say that this is going to be a breathtaking success. I think if we were running a longer file than 4 minutes, and even 4 minutes is cutting it, I think playback is going to override the buffering. I think we're going to see that here on screen, and we're going to see that stilted kind of pause. There we are on screen. It's doing its catch up there, but nonetheless still pretty darn good. It still gave it a bloody good run up, and we can start to kind of ascertain now where the limitations are in terms of 8K. We'll go to our last one here. This 60 frames per second HDR Ultra HD. This is called World. It's an 8K file here at the bottom, and it's an MKV. This will be our last test file now before we wrap things up. But right now, for me, it's looking pretty darn good. I'm impressed that it was able to do 8K as much as it could, to be frank. We have to at least acknowledge some caveats along the way while it's doing that. Number one, all the stuff that we've done today has been over the local area network. Everything we've done has been non-remote access. It's all been lovely and LAN. And consequently, had we been performing this test remotely, there's every possibility it would not have been as good as this. Also, we have to at least acknowledge that these test files, there isn't a huge amount of overlap when it comes to covering the gamut. What we have is a very small window into the world of 8K media, and therefore these files are not representative of the full range and scope of 8K multimedia as it starts to blossom into the market in 2023. But still nonetheless, this is the second ever NAS I've tested for 8K here on the channel, and I'll tell you right now, this is hugely impressive when you put it into the scope of its price tag. Because normally, if you're discussing 8K, Plex or no Plex, again, you're talking Intel Core, you're talking some particularly powerful systems, all ones with a graphics card integrated into them, either in the DIY sector or in some cases, a turnkey solution that you've introduced a graphics card into from brands like QNAP. But this is a system that's running on a Celeron processor, and it's running on a Celeron with 4 gig of memory, but thanks to those NVMEs, it is doing an absolutely banging job of delivering this data here. And overall, although I can't recommend this for 8K based on this information, I will say that if your infrastructure for your multimedia has client side, so that's all your device 8K handling, I think this might be a good scalable solution for that. I think right now, the temperature of the system is insane. It has gone up in its temperature quite significantly. I think it's worth us taking a very quick look at that temperature dial there. It definitely feels like it's rising quite substantially, and we are starting to err towards throttling areas there. Let's go into the storage area, but still nonetheless, let's go and look at our individual drive temperatures, and we're starting to see some of those. They're not so bad, certainly, if those are accurate, which again surprises me if that is accurate there, because that's very low indeed, despite the throttling. Nonetheless, this whole system is getting exceedingly warm because the CPU is obviously getting pushed to breaking point there. And although when we look at this system and we know that the drives are here, I can tell you right now, and I should have maybe got some temperature sensors out, this side of the NAS is exceedingly hot because of what the processor's having to do. But this has been 8K testing on the Flashstor Flashstor series there. What do you guys think? Do you think this is warranting a second test? I'm not sure, but if you think so, let me know. Again, do watch the 4K and 1080p Plex testing video already, because if anything, this really did smash a lot of our preconceptions about Celeron. But thank you so much for watching. There should be links to other articles and videos that we've done on this NAS in the description. If you need help choosing the right NAS for your multimedia needs or otherwise, there's a free NAS Compare help and support. If you go to our page on the right hand side, big blue button, free support from me and Eddie there, or go to the Ask NAS Compares forum. You can go there. Eddie's mostly on that, and there is our Discord that's got me, very rarely if I'm honest, Ed and other members of the NAS community to help you out. I'm busy doing videos like this. And lastly, if you found this video helpful, and if you were going to shop at the likes of Amazon, Newegg, B&H, eBay, Scan, any of these stores, please, please, please use the links in the description to take you there. It costs you nothing extra to do so, and those links will take you to the store in your region. And by doing so, anything you buy, and I mean anything, results in a kickback coming to here on the channel, where it's just me and Eddie doing all of this, and it really helps us to keep doing what we do, and it allows you to passively support content creators like us without you having to fish for your PayPal information. You just buy something on the store that you were going to go to anyway, and then we get a kickback. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic week.